Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Business Morning, coming to you live from Channels Television from Monday the 23rd to Wednesday the 25th of April. That's next week. Local and international investors, renowned key speakers and eminent personalities will gather at the 6th Lagos Economic Summit, also known as Ehimbeti 2012. Well, this year's theme is quite an interesting one, from bricks to brinks. Now, the organizers of the summit say that they want to position Lagos to be that state that would put Nigeria among the 5 top emerging economies, also known as the BRICS. That's Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And recently, South Africa, they wanted to become BRICS, with Nigeria right in the middle. Well, here to tell us more about that is the Lagos State Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget, Mr.Ben Akabueze. Thank you, Ben, for being here this morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I was looking at the theme, quite an interesting one, from bricks to brinks, with the end there for, representing Nigeria. Now, we do know that these 5 nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and recently South Africa that just joined, that now considered the top 5 emerging economies. Do you think Nigeria deserves to be there?
Oh, absolutely. We do deserve to be there. And if we had taken our opportunities, previous to now, we would probably, be a larger economy than South Africa today on the continent. And if we do get it right, even from now on, it won't be long. And these are not just my predictions, but these are, widely held, views that Nigeria could, very, easily become the largest economy on the African continent. We're the 2nd largest now, even with the recent rebasing of the, GDP. We're just within very close shot of the South African economy by GDP. But beyond that is really, the potential of this economy is just amazing. And, we only have ourselves to, we shouldn't even be talking about just being larger than South Africa, but, really
now
being way up there.
You say Lagos holds the key. Now let's go into the summit. Tell us what the summit is basically out to achieve.
Well, 2 key messages that this summit seeks to, basically present. One is, as you have, rightly, noted, that Nigeria deserves to be in that league of, leading, emerging, market economies. And secondly, that for Nigeria to take its rightful place in that league, Lagos has a critical role to play. Lagos is, without, doubt, the economic, nerve center of this, this country, and indeed the West African sub-region, and everyone, acknowledges that. But, if what seems not, very clear to people, and I'm talking about, Nigerians from the rest of, the country, whether they, be the federal government or the other state governments, is an understanding that it's not about, Lagos is just another state, one of the 36 and whatever. But seriously speaking, Lagos has, the strongest potential for, for helping us, make that quantum leap that we need to, to make as a country.
Sorry to butt in. Isn't that because I was going to come to what you mentioned earlier? You said people have said that Lagos is just one of 36 states, and that's the truth. And in terms of size, we are smaller compared to some other states. Isn't this such a huge burden for the state to carry if we're going to be the one to catapult Nigeria into the BRICS, as it were?
Well, it's a burden that the state is carrying already. It may not have chosen to carry it, but it's a burden that is upon it. Lagos is just 0.4% of Nigeria's land mass, but home to about 13% of the population. This is the one place where you will be hard-pressed to find any community in the rest of Nigeria that is not represented, here in Lagos. And therefore, whatever happens in Lagos, for good or for bad, basically, has impact across the entire, nation. And, there's an analogy that we use, the analogy of the sitting room. In every home, they have the sitting room and they have the bedrooms and, the back rooms. Everyone tries to make their sitting room look, nice and presentable, even if the rest of the house is, which is
disarray,
away from the site of visitors. And we say to people, look, the reality is that Lagos is Nigeria's sitting room. This is the prime gateway into this country. I mean, about 80% of international air, traffic into and out of Nigeria, originates or terminates in Lagos. This is the gateway. So most people, non-Nigerians, their first contact with this country is Lagos, and therefore it's in the interest of all of us that our sitting room is made to look really nice. But beyond that also is that, over 60% of, industrial and commercial concerns in this country are based here. Close to 50% of our professional workforce is here, across different professions, doctors, accountants, lawyers, you name it. 40% of the network of banks, the branch network of banks is here, and with the exception of maybe one or two banks, all of them are headquartered here. I mean, I can go, on and on.
So what kind of investors are you looking to attract to this summit? I understand it's not the first summit. There have been summits in the past. This is the sixth one. What kind of investors this time are you looking to attract?
We're looking for serious investors, domestic and foreign. We don't make that strong distinction between foreign and domestic investors, because we believe that at the end of the day, all investors are looking for the same thing. They're looking for, a conducive, investment climate. They're looking for, a safe, secure, environment. They're looking for predictability in terms of rules and, regulations. They're looking for a market for, whatever it is, whatever goods or services.
You're confident Lagos has all of this security, perhaps good transportation network, all of that, all those things that investors going around the world are looking for, especially from an emerging economy like Nigeria.
Lagos has, a lot of it, but then, Lagos is also challenged in some ways, in those, some of those things that the investors are looking for. But then, embedded in those challenges are the opportunities. I mean, so for instance, we're challenged in the area of public transportation. Okay, we would like to see, a more efficient public transportation system. Would like to be able to minimize the, man hours lost in traffic across the. So one person can look at that and call it a challenge, but then a wiser investor will look at it and see in it, opportunities. I mean, take for instance, they talk about, bus assembly plants in Europe or, closing down because they don't have market. And here we are in Lagos. I mean, there are over 30,000 of these danfos and, other, buses like that are not really appropriate for mass transit. All over the place. Our goal is to replace them with, high capacity, appropriate, mass transit buses. So clearly you see that a bus assembly plant here is something that, makes sense. So someone can look at, they don't have a good public bus system and see it's a challenge. Someone who looks at this and says, I see an opportunity here. We must be the only city of this size, 20 million people plus, that does not have, a rail transit system. And we have in our transportation master plan for Lagos designed, 7, light rail corridors. We are in the process of implementing, the first 2. But
so you want
there's
investors,
5 to be taken.
You
yes.
want investors to come in, perhaps at this stage where you are in terms of implementing the transportation scheme, to be part of it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are immense opportunities.
Okay.
I mean, 20%, 22% of the area called Lagos is water, and so water-based transportation, which is an area that we haven't paid sufficient heed in the past, represents another major investment opportunity. At this summit, we are focusing keenly on 4 sectors: power, agriculture and agro-allied, transportation, and housing and urban renewal. And we're saying focusing on these 4 key sectors, because not only do they represent in and of themselves significant investment opportunities, but they are also enablers to other sectors. I mean, power. I mean, everyone, every sector, every other industry needs power. I mean, agriculture, agriculture. We need to feed the people. We need, food, food security for the state. But beyond that is also a lot of other industries. Agricultural, products constitute their own, raw materials. And one way that we can really get an industrial, base develop is off the back of the agro-allied, industrial, sector, where we've got comparative, advantage. Transportation, I mean, you need to be able to move people and goods, efficiently, whatever business that you are in. So there are opportunities in the sector, but it also enables, other sectors to operate. And of course, housing, people have got to be housed. But in delivering the about 1 million naira, about 1 million housing units shortfall that we reckon in the states. I'm talking about good quality, decent housing. There's opportunity in that itself, but that also then, better quality housing is, an enabler for other, industries.
Now, this is not the first time Lagos State has called, investors or has tried to attract investors. This is the 6th. In terms of progress or achievements coming from right from the start up to now, how would you rate the progress made so far? I know the first couple of summits were just to identify the challenges. At what stage are you now in terms of, selling what potential to investors?
Well, the first 3 summits were largely diagnostic. We were focusing on in-depth analysis of the issues, making sure there's a common understanding and appreciation of what the challenges were. But from the 4th summit, we switched more to basically an implementation mode. The summits were more about strategies for delivering, for implementing, and so. The 4th summit, our theme was transforming Lagos into Africa's model mega city. And by the 5th one, we were looking at investment opportunities in Africa's emerging model mega city, because we see Lagos, and all of us who live here or who visit Lagos can look around and see that Lagos is indeed emerging into that model mega city that we long for. And by this 6th summit now, we are basically then taking that a step further. We're saying, look, from bricks to brinks, Lagos holds the key. This is where you have the markets. This is where you have the manpower. This is where you have the best communication facilities in the country. This is where you have the best in terms of access, transportation. Our judicial system in Lagos, we're proud to say, is the best in the country. So when investors like to be able to enforce their contractual rights, they need to know that is
Still speaking about investors, now there was a report that was released last week by the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation on the ease of doing business among countries. It polled 189 countries, and on that list, Nigeria came 133rd, almost at the bottom of the list. Now, of course, there was a list, about 10 of them, construction permits, access to electricity, access to credit, and some other things. And in terms of the regulatory environment here in Nigeria, how easy will it be for an investor, both even the local ones, to do business here or invest in Lagos State? Is Lagos State house in order in terms of regulation?
Well, when you look at those the doing business ease of doing business indicators, some of them are things that fall within the remit of the state government. But most of those where Nigeria isn't doing well fall within the remit of the federal government. So it's got to be a collaborative effort between us and the federal government, and thankfully that is happening. The current Minister for Trade and Investment is is basically focused on that. And there are a number of, not too difficult things that working together, if we did, Nigeria could easily leap over 70 points in terms of improvement on that ladder. And they're not very difficult things to do. And I believe that we would get there.
Now, in terms of, because I know one of the ways, one thing that states like Lagos, not just Lagos State, states all over the Federation need is funding. And one way that states can do that is actually through taxation. Now, for Lagos State, how has taxation been? Is this something you also want to put as part of trying to raise funds while you also bring in investors to invest?
Well, I mean, traditionally the way governments are funded, and even till today, most parts of the world is through taxation. And it's not just about funding, but it's at the heart of what is a social contract that should exist between government and the governed, where in exchange for the government collecting taxes from the people, government commits itself to delivering certain goods and services to the people. What has happened in Nigeria is, for too long, that social contract, the essence of it, was vitiated. So the people didn't pay taxes. People simply mouthed the cliche, taxpayers' money, whereas they really didn't pay taxes. Most governments were funded by simply going up to the monthly federal allocation account committee and getting their handouts. And because people didn't really pay the taxes, they did not have the passion to hold their governments accountable. What we're saying in Lagos is we've got to basically enforce that social contract. We would ask you to pay your taxes in accordance with the law, and we will hold ourselves accountable to you as well for what we do with those taxes. That's the only way modern states are run. And so that's all that we're doing. We haven't changed the law. As a state government, we can only collect personal income taxes. But even the Personal Income Tax Act is a federal legislation made by the National Assembly. We don't make the laws on it. And all we've sought to do is enforce the law and say, this is what the law says. You've got to pay your taxes in accordance with the law. And we would use those tax nairas, for your good.
Okay, now, right from the first summit down to this, or the fifth one, before this one, in terms of feedback, what has been the feedback from investors, especially the foreign ones that have been attending the previous summits, and what you think, what is that thing that they're looking for, that they want ultimately?
Well, I mean, they have seen from one summit to the next that we're making progress on the issues that are of, interest, of concern to them. We have also to demonstrate our accountability to the summit process. At the beginning of every summit, we make a presentation showing the recommendations from the previous summits and how far we have come with implementation. And we were proud to say that over 90% of the recommendations from the previous 5 summits have been implemented, and pretty much the rest are work in progress.
So it's pretty much been very positive in terms of feedback.
Oh, yes.
So does that mean you're expecting more investors to attend this? You're expecting a bigger crowd this time around?
We think so. We think.
Oh, you're hopeful. You're optimistic that you will have a bigger
Yes,
crowd this time.
Finally,
let's take a look at some of the key speakers. What was the criteria in choosing these key speakers? I understand you have the Vice President of the Standard Chartered African Region Global Bank, Ms. Razia Khan. You have Mr. Bill Richardson, former U.S. Secretary for Energy, and of course you have the Managing Director of First Bank, Mr. Bisi Onosoya. In terms of picking these key speakers, what were the margins or criteria that you used?
Well, Razia Khan is very knowledgeable about the African economy, and it was difficult to find a better person to deal with the subject, from BRICS to Brinks, Lagos. So she has an amazing depth of understanding and clarity of thought about this African economy and the direction that it should be headed, and for countries like Nigeria and so on. So you will find that out. Bill Richardson was a former two-term governor of the state of New Mexico in the United States, and U.S. Energy Secretary. I mean, as well as being a presidential candidate. So the three areas there that we can tap on Bill Richardson's wealth of experience. One, he's managed a state, and in the U.S. they have a competitive federal system of government, which is something that we need to learn about from in Nigeria, how states can compete within a federal system to improve their investment climates against the rest of. And then, as former energy secretary, power is a major area of challenge here. He will be speaking at that power forum. And then, of course, as a online politician, practiced in in the democratic system, we will be able to also share from his wealth of experience.
Okay, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Mr.Ben Akabueze, for being here, and I do wish you a successful outing. I pray that it will be a very, very positive turnout, and of course Lagos State will be the better for it at the end of the day.
And
thank
Nigeria.
you, and Nigeria ultimately. Thank you so much for coming and being a part of the program. I have been talking to Mr.Ben Akabueze. He's the Lagos State Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget, and he has been talking about the forthcoming 6th Lagos Economic Summit, also known as Ehingbeti 2012, and this year's theme is From Bricks to Brinks. Lagos holds the key. It will be taking place from Monday the 23rd of April to Wednesday the 25th of April. That's next week, Monday to Wednesday. And of course, expecting a number of key international and local speakers to come to attend that event. And of course, we'll be also expecting local and international investors. It's going to be a very interesting event, and those who have interest in it are advised or being told to attend that particular summit. We'll take another quick break now. When we come back, I'll be talking to Mr. Michael Itegboje. He's the president of the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers. We're still tracking the ad hoc committee of House of Reps who are investigating the near collapse of the capital market. He'll be coming to tell us more about it, because he was also one of the people there who made some presentations. We'll be talking about that when we return. Please join us again.